Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler. Today I'm going to be drawing Fester and Grandmama Addams. Here we have the two Charles Addams characters that I think work best outside the Addams Family dynamic. I think they should have made a Netflix show named Fester instead of one named Wednesday. And looking at my notes, I see that they have in fact greenlit a Netflix show about Fester. I hope it's better than Wednesday turned out to be. Alright, what I'm doing here is I'm just sketching out the positions of the characters. I've figured out the sort of scenario I want to see them in. Got Fester looking like a big bell. Grandma looking like a little troll. And up on top of Fester's head we've got Thing, the disembodied hand that's the Addams Family pet. Now, in the original New Yorker cartoons, Thing was just a normal person. You never see them completely, but they're always peering around a corner or out from over a balcony with big buggy eyes like Gollum. There may be one or two drawings that he did where Thing is seated at the dinner table looking very small and pitiful. Eventually, in the 1960s, for the 1962 television show, they decided to make Thing, instead of casting an extra, they decided to make Thing a disembodied hand that could pop out of little boxes and stuff. In that show, Thing is always credited as being played by itself, which marks Thing as one of the first gender non-binary characters in television history, even though the hand itself was usually played by Ted Cassidy, who also played Lurch. I think the reasoning for that is that he had very large, expressive hands. When Lurch was in the scene with Thing, various crew members would hide underneath of tables and just stick their hands out of the necessary boxes. You can see here that we're building a little bit of a scenario. Fester and Grandmama going hunting somewhere. Grandma's the spotter. Fester as the sharpshooter. A little fun fact, when the Addams Family aired in Mexico, Thing was named Fingers. In Germany, Thing's name ends up translating as Ice Cold Little Hand. And in Hungary, Thing is called whatchamacallit. Everywhere else they were up, and Thing just gets called Thing or Hand. We've started inking Uncle Fester. Fester originally showed up in the New Yorker cartoons in 1946. Charles Addams drew him in a cartoon where he's a creepy little pervert laughing in a movie theater at some very sad tragedy that everyone else in the audience has tears running down their face. And the way he draws this guy makes him almost look like he's got fangs. Personally, I think that Addams was drawing some inspiration from R.F. Munro's Nosferatu, classic black and white silent film. You can sort of see the resemblance. If Nosferatu put on about 150 pounds, they're both pale, they're both bald, they both have dark, sunken eyes, and they both wear pretty much the same coat and have no neck. When consulting for the television show, Charles Addams made some notes on the characters to help along the directors and the writers and the actors get into character. Here's what he said about Fester. Uncle Fester is incorrigible, and except for the good nature of the family and the ignorance of the police, would ordinarily be under lock and key. The complexion, like that of Morticia, is dead white. The eyes are pig-like and deeply embedded, circled unhealthily in black. No teeth and absolutely hairless. He likes to fish, but usually employs dynamite or some other unfair means. He keeps falcons on the roof, which he uses for hunting. His one costume is a black greatcoat with an enormous collar, summer and winter. He is fat with pudgy little hands and feet. And Fester's design has pretty much stayed exactly the same throughout all interpretations of the character. Charles Addams has said that Fester is probably the character who's closest to himself. There's no resemblance physically, but one can imagine that if Fester Addams drew New Yorker cartoons, they'd look exactly like Charles Addams's. And on that note, I'm going to take a sidebar, trying to place different cartoonists' styles to different various members of the Addams family. If Gomez Addams was a cartoonist, he wouldn't have drawn for the New Yorker, he'd have drawn for Playboy, definitely. And his art style would probably look like Phil Interlandes, or scratch that, Tommy Ungerers, who was known both for his children's books and for his sketchbooks of sex and bondage cartoons. Morticia, I think she'd draw like Edward Gorey. He wasn't a cartoonist, but he did do a couple of covers for the New Yorker. Pugsley's cartoon avatar is Ed Steed, a contemporary cartoonist with a sort of scratchy, childish sort of style and equally morbid sense of humor. His flagship characters always have little scrunched up faces and evil grins. And Wednesday, I think that it would have been inevitable that Wednesday would replace Ronald Searle as the creator of the St. Trinian's School for Wayward Girls. Lurch can't draw, but I imagine him actually writing articles for the New Yorker under a pen name like Ronan Farrow or something. And Grandmama is responsible for the Voynich manuscript. If you don't know what that is, it's just look it up on Wikipedia. I'm doing a little work here on Fester's blunderbuss. Big, giant, old-fashioned gun. In the 60s TV show, he'd whip this thing out at any opportunity. If anyone asked him to solve a problem, he'd be like, "Let's kill it with the blunderbuss." They sort of removed that aspect of his character for most of the post-90s versions. I may not have mentioned it before, but I'm using a Kuretake Bimoji Brushpen. I like to mention materials whenever I get the chance. This is a disposable brush pen, available I think for like $4 at Plaza Arts, any other art stores. They're really good. They are waterproof, they don't smudge. You can ink right on top of them. I was overjoyed when I found them. I only wish that I could find a version that wasn't disposable, that was refillable. And now that I think about it, I actually have. It just doesn't have the same fine point that you can see me using here. It's a little bit wetter of a brush. And that doesn't work quite as well for me, for my style. Making this the silliest, most ridiculous fictional gun possible. Lots of little flints and flintlocks and scopes on top of that. You really couldn't look through that scope without chewing up your chin. Working on the greatcoat here. The thing about drawing long, not wobbly lines, they don't necessarily have to be always straight. But if you're doing long lines and you don't want wobbles or curves in them, you gotta hold your wrist completely still and draw from the elbow. That's the drawing tip for today. It's a little bit harder, but nothing worthwhile is ever easy. I got that off the back of an Optimus Prime trading card. I think that's his yearbook quote or something. Putting Fester in some working man's boots. The Addams family is supposed to be an aristocratic family, but I feel like Fester Addams has always struck me as a kind of working class character. He wears the same clothes every day. They're not nice clothes. He would probably have crappy, muddy boots all the time with cardboard soles and really thin, wrinkly leather that sort of molded itself to the shape of his feet. Picking up the Windsor-Newton felt tip pen, just so I can do a little detail work on his buttons. Drawing the invisible hidden button, just to make sure I get the placement right. I'm not sure that mattered too much. Alright, I can see I'm doing some squiggles and curls, so that must mean I'm working on Grandma Addams, or canonically, Grandmama Addams. In the 1962 version of the Addams Family on TV, Addams described Grandmama like this. This disrespectful old hag is the mother of Gomez and husband of Morticia. Well, no, she's not the husband of Morticia. Gomez is the husband of Morticia. She willingly helps with the dishes, cheats at solitaire, and is thoroughly dishonest. She, too, is a favorite with the children and will make them cookies in the shapes of bats, skulls, and bones. Good-humored about all and can be garrulous. The complexion is dark, the hair is white and frizzy and uncombed. She has a light beard and a large mole. She wears a shawl on all occasions. Thick socks and fleece slippers under a bombazine skirt. You'll see, you can see a little bit in the pencils I've drawn the shawl in. Once I've inked it, it'll be clear. That's why I ink. I don't know what a bombazine skirt is. I didn't bother to look it up. So just imagine that whatever I've drawn there is what a bombazine skirt is supposed to look like. Grandmama Addams first appeared drawn by Charles Addams in the New Yorker in 1938. But that's the official historical record. I think there's a little wiggle room because Charles Addams really liked to do cartoons with crones and witches and evil old women in them. And Grandmama is nothing if not a evil old crone. There are a couple of cartoons which predate 1938, which could be seen as proto-grandmas. Grandmas wearing different clothes or, cooking on the side of a mountain instead of inside a haunted mansion. There's also the minor issue that it's never been canonical which side of the family Grandmama and Fester belong to. As you just heard, according to Addams, Grandma's supposed to be Gomez's mother, and Fester is supposed to be Morticia's brother. But, for the audience, that doesn't really work because it means that out of the Addams family, Fester isn't an Addams. Morticia's maiden name is supposed to be Frump, which makes him Fester Frump, not Fester Addams. There's also the thing where Grandma's name is also supposed to be Frump. So she would be named Frump Addams. They fixed this a little bit in the 1991 Barry Sonnenfeld movie, where Fester, played by Christopher Lloyd, is portrayed as Gomez's brother, meaning that he's Uncle Fester to the children. And Grandmama Addams is Morticia's mother, but that also means that Grandmama isn't an Addams, and we just never learn her last name. So sometimes it gets switched around. There are a couple of other versions of the Addams Family that I haven't watched. They could switch it back in either of those. The only really important thing is that all the members of the Addams Family live together in a loving and incredibly creepy, weird, crazy-ass household. You can see I've decided to eschew the Windsor-Newton and just draw some of the details on Grandma's binoculars with the brush pen. This is purely because I didn't want to stop drawing. Sometimes it can ruin the rhythm to drop a pen and then pick it back up again. One thing I immediately regretted with this drawing is I gave Grandma evil eyes. I would have liked not to do that. I was trying to give her like bushy owl eyebrows. They just ended up sort of giving her a mean look. Trying to play that off as a little bit as just plain shadows on her face. But I don't consider the character of Grandma Addams to be necessarily a mean or cruel lady. And really none of the Addamses are supposed to be actively evil in a way that normal human beings, non-fictional people, could consider evil. They're just eccentric. I did have to use my own hand as reference for that. And here we go with the bombazine skirt. Everybody learn right now what a bombazine skirt is. I'm basing the design of Grandma's boots there on Margaret Hamilton's boots in the original Wizard of Oz. She's got these sort of clumpy, sort of high heel boots, and I thought witch's boots are perfect for Grandma Addams. Interestingly enough, Margaret Hamilton, Wicked Witch of the West, also plays Morticia's mother in the 1962 TV show. But I did try and give every member of the Addams family, including Thing, black fingernails. Trying to do a little bit of outlining the folds on Grandma's dress. You can see I messed up a little. Not necessarily messed up, but I wasn't happy with the direction the folds were going, so I did a little etching on top of that. I'll come up with a better solution later. You'll see. It's important to give fabrics an illusion of three-dimensionality. I think I'll come up with a much better illusion in a few minutes. Now, since this is the Addams Family, I didn't want anything to have a perfectly straight line. I don't like drawing straight lines anyway. But I wanted this sign to look a little crooked, a little cartoony, just so it would fit in better with the characters. Erasing is, I think, just as important of a skill as drawing. Here I'm using a light touch so I don't rip up any of the paper or scratch up any of the ink drawing. Some inks will come up with an eraser, leaving you with a less solid color to Here I'm using a China marker to color in Fester's greatcoat. I didn't want it solid black. I thought that would be a little bit boring. But I did want it dark colored. Rather than try stripes, which were pointillism, both of these could be misconstrued as a pattern on the coat, and he definitely never has a pattern on his coat. I opted for a China marker. This gives you a nice, on Canson paper at least, it gives you a nice rough sort of charcoal texture without the mess. it lays on really smooth like a crayon. It would look ridiculous for Fester to have white boots, so we got to color him black now. When things are just line art, you can imagine them any color. Once you start making those choices for the audience, you've got to go all the way, I feel. Now, design-wise, it's important that if you've got multiple textures, multiple shades, that you sort of pattern them. So I can't have two China marker coats right next to each other. The shapes would blur together. It wouldn't be pleasing. So you can see on Fester I have China marker and then solid black. I've given Grandma Addams a white shawl, black blouse, and I'm doing a little squiggly thing with her skirt to represent a sort of floral pattern, a bombazine pattern. And you can see how I'm able to add a little more squiggles to give some dimensionality. Adding a little bit of texture to the binoculars, to the bazooka blunderbuss. Thick solid line for the shadow on the blunderbuss there. Partially because it's an antique. It wouldn't be perfectly smooth, even with the best shine, and partially out of sheer laziness. I could if I wanted to, but I don't. And that's what a style means. A little filigree on the blunderbuss. Doing a little extra highlighting. And some of the world's most shoddily applied wood texturing. grandma the same black boots as the Wicked Witch of the West. And let's get to work on that sign. There's that joke from the Addams Family Values. Pugsley takes an archery class, immediately kills a bald eagle with his first arrow. The instructor says, "I thought those were extinct." And Wednesday replies, "They are now." And that's Fester and Grandmama Addams. If you liked what you saw today, like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to see more of my art and comics and videos, you can check me out on Blue Sky and Patreon at phostetlerart, all one word, links below. Thanks for watching. Stay sketching, stay legendary. See you next time.